Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in today. My name is Dalen. I'm a therapist with Nexus Youth and Family Services. We're a nonprofit organization that focuses on mental health, youth advocacy, parent advocacy. And if you have any needs for our services, they're all free. We can be reached at 209-257-1980, and you can dial extension 101. Or you can go to our website, which is www.nexusyfs.org, to inquire about any of our programs. Today's topic, which I think is a really important topic and often flies under the radar, is recognizing and owning your feelings to move through emotional distress and discomfort. And without further ado, I'd like to get into the presentation. We are in a really interesting time right now that often leaves a lot of us in a very confused situation with our lives, with our families, at work, with friends. And we have a lot of different feelings. And we're dealing with a lot of major life issues with price inflation. The cost of everything is going up. Political unrest, things that we see on the news, a lot of polarization with social media, and there's still a lot of strange effects in this post-pandemic environment. And so we have a lot of feelings and constantly being bombarded by strenuous situations. And we're feeling anxious and stressed out and depressed, lonely and bored and overwhelmed. And it's okay to have these feelings. And first off, I think identifying that I am having these feelings, we are having these feelings, our neighbors, our friends, our family, we're having these feelings. And the first thing to be able to do is to talk about it with people in your family or in your close friendship groups. It's really important to normalize all of the issues that you're going through and that you just don't feel right. It feels off. A lot of times with work and all of the things that we have to do with family, all of the things, shopping, getting groceries, working long hours, taking kids places, working on homework, making sure that kids are doing well in school. A lot of these things add up and they cause a lot of stress. And then when we have uncertainty with things that we see on TV, things that we're watching on social media, that adds another layer of stress. And we start to feel depressed with various things. Why do I feel this way? I'm not motivated. And you feel kind of cut off because everybody's so busy. And not only do you feel depressed, and you're not interacting with certain people, you're not interacting with friends because you just don't have the time, that starts to build. And oftentimes in our relationships, we start to feel separated from the people that we love because of all of the stress and how overwhelmed we feel, not knowing that these feelings are normal if we're not attending to things that can help us. And we tend to get in kind of like a cycle that runs over and over, where we need to check out, right? So we're super stressed out. We don't necessarily know the best ways to make ourselves feel better by doing, the things that make us feel good. Sometimes immediately, like by doing a lot of social media, playing video games, watching TV. Those are all things that actually end up making us feel lonely because we're not connecting with the people that we care about, and we're not connecting with activities that really make us feel good. And some of the activities that we're doing also, they don't benefit our health. And there's a big distinction between just doing something that makes you feel good, but then also doing something that is good for you and feels good. And so we end up tending to kind of get in the cycle of loneliness, and then we get bored. And then when we're bored, we are trying to do things that are super easy and are kind of part of our pattern of, checking our phone, being on our phones. Sometimes we get the update that says how much we've been on our phones, and we're like, wow, I can't believe I was on the phone that much. And you get bored, but then you start to feel like I'm not getting to anything, and you feel anxious because now you're not getting things done, and our plates are super full, and then we start to feel overwhelmed. So then we check out again, and we kind of create that whole cycle where we're not getting to the things that really matter. We're not taking care of things around the house. we're not taking care of the family the way we want, and everybody's kind of scattered and kind of doing their own thing, and then you feel disjointed in the house. Kids are, off playing video games. You're not spending family time together. You're not spending time with your significant other, really connecting in a positive way that strengthens your relationship. So then you feel lonely again, and then when you're lonely, then the cycle starts over being bored and overwhelmed. So I just wanted you all to hear that the cycle that this happens with is normal, but it doesn't feel good. A lot of people are feeling this way, and it's okay to feel this way. And I think that people need to hear that. There is a way to help combat some of these feelings, and I'd like to talk about that in the next slide. So one of the ways that we kind of combat some of this topic is really understanding what might be causing it, and how our thinking and what our processes are that are leading us down a particular path. So I put some feelings up here that might seem strange that we're going through. The first one is unproductive. How many of you feel like you're completely unproductive and that you should be taking care of all sorts of things all the time? And you even see it reinforced. There's a bunch of social media platforms that like how to be the best, how to be a go-getter, how to accomplish everything, and be the most interesting person in the room. There's so many things that we're being bombarded with. You have to do this, you have to do this, but then at the same time, we're not taking care of what might be our normal things at the house. We're struggling, and we might feel unproductive because of all of the stress that we're under. That might feel strange. The other part is there's people that they've got lists, and they've got so many things on their plate where they're constantly taking care of all of these things, but then they're not getting to the most important things, and they're feeling wrung out at the end of the day. So really kind of taking a look at your process and really trying to figure out what is really manageable in your day-to-day, and really paying attention to the types of media that you're consuming and what it is that you're trying to accomplish. That is super important, because you don't want to put too much on your plate. There's another way to think about it is some people also want to just do what makes them feel good and what's better for their family. That's super important. Are you like super task oriented? I've got to knock these things out of the park. I have this mindset where I'm constantly on the go, and I'm winning because I'm taking care of everything. Or are you really focusing on what's meaningful to you and your family, what's going to make your family feel loved and cared for, and really are the most important things? Kids won't look back and go, wow, my dad really took care of everything all the time. He knocked all of the tasks out of the park. Or we had the best time doing this every night. Or we had the best, we spent quality time together. So, I think prioritizing what's super important and really kind of what is going to make your family feel better, I think, is a way to combat that unproductive feeling. Another thing that's is confusion. So many of us are burning the candle at both ends. We're waking up early. We're getting as much done as we can. We're working long days, that we're taking care of families, then we're staying up late to take care of more things, and we're doing that over and over and over, and we're depriving ourselves of the most valuable way that we handle all of the stress is our sleep cycle. Getting sleep is super important. It's how you kind of like repair your mind. It's how you repair all of the your hormones reset every night and put you in a way to handle stress. And how we handle stress, how we handle anger, how we handle problems throughout the day, all of the struggles that our kids are having, the struggles that we're having. If you are not getting enough sleep, you are not setting your body up to be able to handle all of the stressors of life. And sometimes we might be getting too much sleep because we're in a kind of a depressed state where we're sleeping 14 to 18 hours a day. that's also another indication that that there's some things going wrong. It, there's our brains, when we're not sleeping, they're not firing on all cylinders. We've kind of got like brain fog, and maybe it's hard to kind of get going in the morning. That can all be just a lack of good quality sleep. And anger is another emotion that we're going through. Like what didn't make us mad before is now setting us off, and we're snapping at people. Maybe we're more frustrated at work, and we have less tolerance for people than we had before. Maybe the little things that our kids do really bugs us, and we find ourselves snapping at them all the time. Anger oftentimes can be because of lack of sleep. It can also be because we've got too many things on our plate, and we realize that we're not getting to the most important things that make our families happy and closer, and have a sense of feeling together. So that's an indicator. If your anger is going off all the time, that could be something that tells you that, hey, I need to really prioritize what's going on. Grief is a strange feeling, but many of us are actually feeling kind of like a cycle of grief. With post-pandemic and all of the stresses that are happening in our life, many of us feel like things aren't normal anymore. And we are all creatures of habit, and most people, even if they force themselves to do things to change, really don't like it when it's forced on us. And we are in a state of grief because things aren't the way they were 5 years ago. Our patterns are different. What we see coming at us through social media is different. Mindsets and arguments and polarization of what we see, there's way more contentious content that's put in front of us. That creates a sense of unease, and it's like, man, it wasn't the way that it used to be. We used to be able to talk to our friends. You have a bunch of those. We used to be able to do this. There's a bit of a grief feeling when things aren't the same. They're not what they used to feel like. And then with guilt and shame, which now tends to be kind of a feeling that we go through, you start to feel like, I can't have the conversations that I had before. You feel guilty about talking about somebody, or maybe your position or the way that you feel shame for having particular thoughts or emotions. You haven't gotten to everything in your day, and you're constantly finding yourself unproductive, and you start to feel guilt and shame. You haven't taken care of all of the tasks. You haven't got the raise at work. You haven't got the new job. You haven't taken care of all of the things at the house. And we start to see everybody else's life on social media. They're doing so well. Everybody's going on a wonderful trip here and there. That is an echo chamber of the best possible scenarios that people are putting out on social media, but it actually affects us mentally and subconsciously, and we start to feel guilt and shame and comparing ourselves to other people when you can't do that. My friends' kids are doing so well, and my kids are having problems. You start to feel guilt and shame because we've kind of we're out of a normal. We're out of feedback from people, interpersonal and personal connections that really help validate how people are really doing. So these are all areas that feel really strange to us, but a lot of people are feeling this way, and it's kind of like a new normal if you allow yourself to kind of get caught up in not really taking care of yourself or your family's well-being. These are feelings that you can definitely deal with on a normal basis. As I was saying before, we're not in the same place we were, and the post-pandemic has also caused a large amount of fear. As the people around us, we find ourselves in different places. We find ourselves in different thought processes and different beliefs, and we start to struggle with values that we have, and then we see other people expressing different types of values. That creates fear. The post-pandemic also has created uncertainty, and specifically, we've had a lot of traumatic experiences in the last few years with things that we see on the news, things that we see in social media, problems that we see happening at schools, problems that our kids are going through. And trauma is a word that's being used and spread more now that it's kind of in the public eye. And trauma is not just post-traumatic stress syndrome anymore, or post-traumatic stress disorder anymore. It's not just something that people experience coming back from war. I have trauma on the slide here, and it's a deeply distressing or disturbing experience, emotional shock following a stressful event or physical injury. And many of the things that have happened to a lot of people can be classified as trauma. So economic concerns, mental health strain, those can all traumatize or be traumatic to a family. And what we start to suffer, where we start to suffer, is when we're not able to make the connections with our family and with our friends that we were able to before, based for whatever reason. Maybe they're fearful of what's happened with the pandemic. Maybe there's issues or values, there's arguments that people have had, or people are so busy they're not making time to connect, because we had already talked about kind of like that loneliness cycle earlier. And what we really want to do is reintegrate with our friends and family. We want things to go back to the way they were, and we're trying to navigate what that looks like for everybody. And you're trying to be cautious and careful of how people, how they want to do that, and trying to communicate with everybody to make sure that we're being as safe as we can, but we're being conscious of how people think about things, and that becomes very uncertain on how to move forward. And fear tends to rule our decisions, and it's almost impossible to speak to somebody about a logical stance when they're afraid. Fear is a different type of response. It actually, in our brain, it is a different area of our brain that kind of takes away some of our thought process and our logical thinking. And I have on here, there's 4 responses to fear, and a lot of people hear fight or flight, but there's actually more, and it is it's a system where we're trying to keep ourselves safe. And when you see or you recognize that people are acting from a stance of fear, you recognize that you should recognize that they're trying to just keep themselves safe. Sometimes people want to fight, attack, deal with insults, and you blame people. You can mistreat people and cause them to be vilified, and you mistreat them. Sometimes people want to face the fear and they want to defend themselves, defend their personal actions. And defending is kind of an act of trying to connect with somebody, protect somebody. I'm connected with my family and I need to protect them, or my friends and I, we feel a particular way, and when you're being kind of assaulted, you want to defend yourself. Flight is definitely hiding, running away from something. Sometimes as an emotion, it's denial. You don't have time to deal with that. That's too much on my plate, or that's not real. Those people are conspiracy theorists. So that's kind of like running away from a problem, avoiding it, or sometimes even sabotaging the validity of something, the validity of an argument, the validity of feelings, the validity that this is really a problem. I don't believe it's really a problem, and you kind of avoid it. And sometimes freeze, which is one of the most significant responses, is complete shutdown, not being able to deal with things, locking themselves away in the house. I just don't have time for that. Justifying or rationalizing that somebody's crazy. I can't deal with that. They're crazy, so I can't have that happen. I can't deal with that. So these are some of the typical responses to fear that we go through as we're experiencing trauma that forces a fear response out of us when we're dealing with other people in our community. So with a lot of the trauma and fear that we have, we tend to let that overwhelm our emotions. And so often there's a strong sense of anger, fear, and responses to that in our community, especially if you're constantly watching the news, especially if you're social media, you're following a bunch of posts or people that talk about fear, talk about problems, issue on this side of the political aisle, issue on that side of the political aisle. One of the things that's important to stop and kind of take a pause is to give yourself some grace. And what I mean by grace is to stop and go, okay, I'm being heightened. My emotions are getting flooded with anxiety, with fear. I'm having these responses where things definitely don't feel normal, and I can't deal with the problems that are there. Stop, give yourself grace, and realize that, you know what, I'm allowed to actually have the feelings that I have. I'm allowed to have multiple feelings. And this is where you start to check in with yourself. Instead of having your feelings and sensitive emotions out in the world, check in with yourself, look inwards. What am I feeling about a particular topic? What am I feeling about my kids? What am I feeling about my partner? What am I feeling about the great things that are going on? And start to really pay attention and identify feelings that you have. It's okay to feel happy. It's okay to feel sad. You can't control other people. Don't try to control other people. Don't go out of your way to try and affect other people. Really focus on what you do have, because your feelings are valid because you feel them, and nobody should tell you otherwise. And if you have somebody in your life continually trying to make you feel a particular way, it's a really good idea to set boundaries. It's okay to feel angry. It's okay to feel excited. And it's important to start to look for those things in your life where you are having some of the more pleasant emotions and focus on those. So a lot of us, to combat our anxiety and our fear and our trauma, we tend to try and control. That's a very common mechanism for us to handle these situations. If you've got something going wrong or you're afraid of something, you try and control it. You try and fix it. You try and adjust it to make it work for you, to make it more manageable for you. And if you can't control it, it causes anxiety, because who knows what could happen. I can't control how my friend's going to react. I can't control what's happening at work. I can't control what's happening in my kid's classroom. Those typically have a lot of fear. And the loss of control really drives up our fear and anxiety. So how do you take back control? The first thing is that you have to recognize that you can't control other people's actions. You can't control how other people feel. You can only control your feelings and your emotions, which means you have to allow yourself to feel. You have to stop. Take a measure of what's going on in you, and then take a look at how your actions are responding to other people, how you want your actions to be portrayed. And you have to take time. And on the second bullet, it's societal pressure tells us to keep moving. Just move on, just move on, just move on. It's actually, that just kind of perpetuates an issue. You're not really solving anything. You're not solving things for yourself. Moving through versus moving on. Moving through is where you take time. Even if your feelings are uncomfortable, even if your emotions are uncomfortable, you take time to sit with them, to think about them, to understand, how do I feel? Why do I feel this way? And then process through that. Talk with somebody. Talk with a partner. Talk with a close friend. Process through why you feel certain things. That's how you start to get control over yourself and your reactions. And it's a way of slowing down instead of moving so fast from problem to problem, from issue to issue. Life can tend to be a whack-a-mole of anxiety-provoking things. Stopping and moving through your emotions and sitting with them is super important. We'll talk more about feelings and emotions in a little bit. Feelings are typically surface level. I feel about something. This made me feel something. This made me feel this way. We all have feelings, but at surface level, emotions are much deeper rooted, and typically emotions are tied to our values. And we're going to talk about that through the 3 A's, through awareness, acceptance, and action. So how do you move through feelings? How do you take ownership and move through them, to sit with them? 3 A's are awareness, acceptance, and action. And they have to be in that order. It's a linear process. The first one is awareness, where you need to be mindful of your emotions. It's knowledge. It's like perceiving how you feel about something, perceiving the awareness, like, this happened to me and therefore I feel this. So-and-so said something I didn't like, and you can be aware of your feelings about that situation. Centering yourself, naming that emotion. I feel this way. Sometimes it's important to say it out loud. Mindful is really being in the moment, not letting your thoughts wandering about the past, the future, the problems. This is how I'm going to handle the situation. It's blocking all of that out and being mindful of, this is how I feel. I'm aware of what's happening to me right now. And then you move to step 2, and that's acceptance. And bad things happen to us all the time. You have a bad day. You can accept that. Something happened to the car. My kid got a bad grade. They did something I didn't like. I made a bad move at work, or I handled a situation with my kids the wrong way, or I yelled at a friend. Accepting what you did is part of it. So you're aware of a feeling, and then accept that feeling. This is how I feel. This is what happened. Acceptance doesn't mean that life gets better. It just means that my way of living life on life's terms improves. So you can accept that how you're handling or how something affected you, that's the way you feel, not how somebody else felt, not the way you should feel, but it's accepting what it actually you are going through. And then action from that, once you're aware of how you feel, you're aware of what's happened, you've accepted the way something is, then you can take action. Now that you feel it, what do I do with it? How am I going to move forward? How am I going to handle a situation? How do I want to talk to my kids? How do I want to interact with my spouse or my partner? So how do you handle the big emotions? The really strong ones, I'm fearful of this. This makes me super angry. I can't handle other people, or I'm so overjoyed. What's important is when you're going through the 3 A's and you take awareness, acceptance, and action, is you have to practice. If you're struggling to handle your emotions, to be in your emotions, you have to practice them. Accepting your feelings doesn't mean dwelling on them. You can move through them faster. You don't want to just sit there and go, oh man, this is the worst thing ever. I feel so horrible all the time. It's important to process through them, and there's various ways that we can do that. And one is getting enough sleep, not too much. 7 to 9 hours is great. It revitalizes your body and helps you to be able to handle big emotions. Eating nutritious foods, cutting out processed foods, cutting out stuff out of the box. Fast food is cheap, and there's a reason why it's cheap. It's it's horrible for your body to recuperate and to handle some of the big things. It doesn't fuel your body with the nutrients it needs to handle some of the challenges in life. Exercise, moving your body. We are all biological machines, and emotions take a lot of energy. Big emotions take a lot of energy out of our body. So our bodies have to be working in tip-top shape, and they've got to be moving to make our bodies better. Staying connected and talking with somebody that you care about, somebody that you trust, somebody that makes you feel good. Talking with best friends, making sure that you spend time going out. Those are all ways that you can help process some of these really big emotions and taking action, because you can bounce ideas off of people. You can talk to people in a very private way to check on your thought process, to check on the actions that you want to take, to check in with them. Often it makes us feel good to help people. So being there for other people is a great way to be reciprocal. They're helping us by letting us talk, and we can talk with them and help them with their problems. Self-care is huge. I'm a huge proponent of this. I've personally been in a situation where I've burnt out. The job can be taxing and too much, and you can burn out. You can burn out handling problems with the kids and the family life. You have to do things that are fun. You have to treat yourself. You've got to rest. You've got to seek support. You've got to make sure that you're taking some individual and some alone time to do the things that make you feel good about yourself. When you start to add up all of these things, they start to allow you to handle some of the stressors, the traumatic things that have gone through your life in recent months can start to feel less and smaller than that overwhelmed feeling that we tend to feel. Additionally, how to deal with the feelings that you have. This slide has some other great examples. I like the image on the left side. You feel off, something is wrong. Then check in. So we said awareness. Then there's something called somatic feeling, which is where do you feel it in your body? Sometimes we feel fear in our chest. Sometimes we feel anxiety in the pit of our stomach. Sometimes anger is a vibration in our head. And then if you could address that feeling, what would you say? What would it say? My stomach feels queasy. I'd like to get away from the situation. Or my stomach doesn't feel right. I'm really anxious. I'm afraid of what could happen if I stay in this situation. And then what is that anxiety, or what is that fear, or what is that strong emotion? What is it trying to tell me? Emotions are always, they're trying to tell us. They're trying to give us information. They're trying to adjust our actions. They're trying to give us information so that we can handle the situation in a better way. So what might this situation that I'm feeling, the sensation in my gut, the tingling in my hands, what could it be saying? What could it be teaching? What can I do right now? What do I need to do right now to solve a problem, to fix something, to connect with somebody, to connect for myself, to give support to somebody? What do I need to do right now? And what steps can I do to take those needs? And additionally, some feelings, once you've gone through a process, you want them to pass. Because you don't want to dwell on something, and so you need to process through it. So we've talked about how the feeling informs us of what we can do, what we need to do, how we can handle a situation. But then sometimes the effects of really strong emotions linger with us, and we don't want to dwell on them. So stretching, resistance exercising, lifting weights, taking walks, running, riding bikes, doing a favorite activity, tennis, walking with friends, going out and shopping, taking a nap, making sure that we've got plenty of rest even in the middle of the day, writing out, journaling. It's really good. So affirmation journaling, so saying things that we think are good about ourselves, the way we handle the situation, what we're grateful for. I'm grateful for my kids. I'm grateful for their health. I'm grateful for my partner because they support me in ways that I don't even know. I'm grateful for where I live because it's safe. I'm grateful for my friends because they check on me. They're always there for me. Those types of things really change the mental structure of how we think about the world. Taking care of our body, getting haircuts, shaving or trimming, or making sure that we've got clothes that we feel good about, taking showers, pampering ourselves. Different types of relaxation methods are also great ways to kind of flush out some of the traumatic feelings that we've had. Deep breathing. You can look on YouTube, you can look all over the place and find a bunch of different relaxation techniques. They all work, you just have to practice with them. So Dalen, I'm constantly dealing with anxiety though. I hear what you're saying about this, but I'm constantly worried about this. This is going to happen. I have to figure this out, and you're constantly worried about that, and you try and process through it, and there's still some issues. So there's some specific ways that we can deal with anxiety, and anxiety really is the fear of something imminently happening in the near future that you can't control. And we get anxious about that because we like to control things when we're afraid. And so that anxiety really is the fear of what could happen. And then we can get stuck on that. And we're constantly afraid of this, afraid of what's going to happen over here, what could happen with my kids. And that can really take its toll on us. So there's a couple practical ways to deal with various types of anxiety. You need to evaluate the distance between your worries and reality. What really could happen? This is what I can control right now. What's really going to happen? How likely is that going to happen? How far out is that worry? Because if you're worrying about something way out in the future constantly, that's not going to help you. The future is so unpredictable. We have no idea really what could happen 10 years down the road, 5 years down the road. Really kind of focus on steps, the closest things that you can do to make sure that you're safe, the closest things that you can do to make sure your family's safe, or control things that you have an immediate influence over right away. Make a plan, create a strategy, and you can always hedge your bets about what could happen in the future. You might have, if you're worried that grocery stores aren't going to have a particular type of food, oh my gosh, I've got to do all of, well, no, we're not sure when that's going to happen, but every time that you grocery shop, you could buy a few extra canned goods. You could buy one thing of water. Then the next time you grocery shop, you can get, an extra thing of toilet paper. So you can create some small strategies and small steps that can alleviate anxiety over a particular problem that you're experiencing. Then the concept of what if this happened, then what? Walk yourself through a logical process. If this happens, then this is what I'll do. So instead of just worrying, because sometimes we just get fixated on the worry. Sometimes we just get like we have an anxiety over something, and we don't stop to problem solve. We just allow ourselves to kind of just be in that worry. Well, if this happens, this is how I'll handle it. Walk yourself through some scenarios of ways that you'll handle a particular situation, and you'll start to realize that it's like, you know what, I'm capable. I can handle these situations if they come up. I don't need to keep worrying about them. Put some contingencies in place. If gas prices shoot to $7 a gallon, this is how I handle the situation. If my job takes away working from home, this is how I'll handle that situation. I'll figure out a way to commute in. I'll figure out a way to ride share. I will take my partner's car because it gets better gas mileage. So there's just a lot of various things that can happen, and if we're always focused on that, what could happen in the future, put a couple things in place. And as you start to realize that you're able to handle these situations and the strategies that you can put in place, you'll start to feel more confident and potentially worry less. So anger, huge emotion. A lot of us experience this emotion all the time. And some of us kind of feed on anger. Some of us can actually be addicted to anger. It's a protective mechanism. When somebody's angry, they oftentimes are trying to protect themselves. They're trying to push away a potential threat. They're trying to defend themselves. They're trying to let you know, stay away from me. I'm angry. I'm big. I'm gonna be mean to you. I'm not getting what I want, so I need to be angry because that's the only way that I get what I want. So anger has a lot of defensive mechanisms. But it's very hard sometimes for people to identify what's under their anger, what's causing the anger, what are they worried about, why are they angry? And you start to recognize because we're being aware, we're accepting kind of what we're feeling and we're putting an action together. So when you look at a big feeling like anger, there are smaller, more intricate, more detailed emotions that are underneath of the iceberg. So an anger iceberg is, we see just the tip of when somebody blows up or when you're blowing up. But there's so much more under it. There could be fear. You could be embarrassed about something. You could be stressed. You could feel helpless. And to feel helpless, you have to control it. And you figured out a way to control it is to be angry, to push that person away so they're not giving you any issues anymore. So when you look at the emotion wheel on the right side of this presentation, you've got angry, which is in the middle of the pie. But there's so many things with anger. As you're identifying your anger, do you feel let down? Do you feel betrayed? Are you humiliated, so you have an anger response? And did that humiliation come from being disrespected? Or were you ridiculed by a boss? Were you ridiculed by a friend online? So it's important to build your emotional vocabulary. There's, surprised, you're startled and you're shocked. Surprise can be amazed, and you can be in awe of something. So this color wheel that has the emotions on it has a lot of small descriptors of deeper emotion and feelings. It's important to take a look at the concept of an anger iceberg. It could be a fearful iceberg. It could be a disgusted iceberg. It could be a happy iceberg. And start to identify the smaller emotions and dig down, where is this coming from? You've got this main concept of an emotion. Figure out where it's really coming from. What are the small details of the emotion? What are you protecting? What are you compensating for? Why are you so elated and happy over this scenario? Because it brings back good feelings about when, as a child, and when you see your child exhibiting that type of behavior, it just makes you so happy. It's great to sit with all of your large emotions and develop more emotional vocabulary. The last thing I wanted to cover with you guys is really important. This is kind of like the protective barrier, and that's setting boundaries for yourself. It's very important to understand that the way you feel is allowed, and not letting other people dictate how you should feel. Regardless of how you feel, nobody gets to control your emotions. It's okay to say no. I respect your process. You're not a burden. These are values that you start to really put in place about yourself to allow you to seek help, to handle your emotions, to go through life, that make it very, very safe for you to kind of keep everybody else's garbage away from you. Like, you don't need to carry everything alone. That means that it's okay to ask for help. If you believe it's okay to ask for help, that is definitely one of your boundaries. I'm going to ask for help. I'm not just going to allow myself to suffer quietly. So it's almost kind of like a rule that you put in place for yourself. It's like a value that you create for yourself to protect you with in all of the uncertain times, all of the strong emotions that people can be dealing with, all of social media that can be consumed. It's okay to put boundaries up. I'm not going to watch certain types of channels because they make me feel bad. I recognize that watching certain types of content is poor for my health. I'm not going to allow my spouse or my partner to talk to me in a particular way. You can say out loud, asking for help is not weakness. You're allowed to hurt. You're allowed to have your feelings. It's okay to cry when you're struggling with certain issues. And then, the boundaries also become like a force field when other people are kind of putting crap on you. You're choosing this for yourself. Well, hold on. You don't need to, you can't tell me how I feel. Why you always have to be so negative? I get to have my emotions. I get to have my feelings. It's all in your head. Well, it's kind of a hurtful statement. It's not all in my head. I get to, you've already recognized how you feel. You've accepted it and you've put some actions. It's not all just in my head. I'm allowed to feel this particular way, and here's my thoughts, and here's why. Man up. That doesn't help anybody. All that says is you're not allowed to feel the way you are, and just go through and just continue to feel pain. Just push through, and your well-being doesn't matter. Don't talk about that. That's disgusting. Or that's inappropriate. Or that's not the way you should feel about something. There's a boundary that you can put there. It's like, look, this is an important topic to talk about. This is how I feel about the topic. And discuss it. And if somebody has problems, you can put a boundary up and go, I'm not willing to talk to you about this. I'm not willing to talk to you when you're angry. I'm not willing to talk to you because you seem like you're attacking me. All of these boundaries that you can put in place to keep yourself safe, to keep yourself protected, to keep your emotional stability, to make sure that you're in control of yourself, not letting people trying to control you. This is boundaries are so important because they keep you grounded. They keep you grounded to your emotions, to who you are, to your to the progress that you want to make, and to how you affect the people that you really care about. Good boundaries and saying no, keeping those values in check. Boundaries are very strong. And hopefully this presentation helped you. If you have any further questions or comments, please contact Nexus at 209-273-9732. That is my work cell if you'd like to talk to me. I'm a therapist here at Nexus. Otherwise, you can call 209-257-1980, extension 101. Hopefully you found this helpful. Thank you.